What about a classified Area 51 file they forgot to erase?
Everyone at the facility knew John the janitor. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the kind of man who made himself important. But he'd been there longer than most of the officers, longer than some of the researchers, long enough that his badge had been updated more times than he could remember, and long enough that no one really questioned where he went anymore. If a wing was sealed off and needed cleaning, they sent John. If the clearance level was high, but the job was simple, wipe it down, mop the floor, leave no trace, they called him. Because John never asked questions, and more importantly, he never repeated answers. He had keys no one talked about. He had access codes no one refreshed, and he never misused them. So when his shift orders changed one Thursday night, he didn't think much of it. The assignment was brief. Coal wing cleanup. Sub-level 11. Cryogenic containment. John had never been to sub-level 11. In fact, he wasn't sure anyone had. Not recently. But the order came through his usual channel, printed on the same yellow slip, stamped with the same initials. He checked his badge. It lit green. Clearance was active. So he went. The lift down was quiet. The usual clunks of old hydraulics gave way to silence as it dropped past the marked levels. Sub-level 9. Sub-level 10. Then a pause. A mechanical shift. And the doors opened. He stepped into a long, low corridor. Lighting was minimal. Just a few strips buzzing faintly along the ceiling. Frost clung to the walls. Not cold like a walk-in freezer. Sterile cold. The kind that tasted metallic in the back of your throat. He made a slow loop around the perimeter. There were maybe 30 pods, each the size of a hospital bed, lined up in neat rows. No labels on the glass, just digital panels on the side, all glowing a uniform blue. The numbers beside them flickered but stayed steady. Minus 220 degrees Celsius. Sealed, stable, secure. He kept his distance. He wasn't paid to inspect anything. Just clean the floor, emptied the disposal bin, wiped down the steel runners by the walls. It wasn't until he was nearly finished that he noticed it. A faint, dark patch near his foot. He frowned, crouched down, touched it. Wet. Not frost, not condensation from his own breath. A drip. He followed it back. Just a few small puddles, spread out. Slow. And then he saw the pod. Same size as the others. Same digital display. But this one had a slow stream of condensation running down the outside. Evenly spaced. Perfectly vertical. As if the surface had warmed just enough for the ice to melt. John looked at the display. Uncatalogued Entity 7. Dormant. Temperature? Minus 220 degrees Celsius. Still glowing blue. Still marked stable. He tapped the display gently. No response. No noise. No motion. Just that single contradiction. The pod said frozen. The surface said otherwise. He looked around once more. Nothing had changed. No footsteps, no shadows, no announcements. Just the gentle hum of the containment system. And the cold. John straightened up. Took one more glance at the pod. then turned, wheeled his cart back to the lift, and rode it up in silence. He didn't mention it in the report, didn't tell anyone at the desk, didn't even write it in his nightly log. Not because he was afraid, not because he didn't care, but because after 23 years at the facility, John had learned the one rule that mattered more than protocol. If something doesn't want to be noticed, don't be the first to notice it. John came back the next night. Same shift, same routine. Didn't expect the assignment to repeat, but there it was. Same yellow slip, same initials, same floor. Sub-level 11. He didn't question it. Maybe they were just being thorough. Maybe the incident the night before hadn't even registered. Just a minor fluctuation in an old pod's insulation. He rode the lift down. No pause this time. It opened without hesitation. Same corridor, same low lights, same metallic cold. He made his sweep, carefully, slowly. But when he reached the middle row, he stopped. The pod was still dripping, more than last time. The puddle was larger now, no longer than a few stray drops. It had spread in a shallow arc, almost like a footprint. Not stepped in, but shaped like something had moved under it. He checked the display again. Still minus 220 degrees Celsius. Still marked dormant. But this time, the light wasn't blue. It was green. Not a steady glow, a slow, pulsing blink. John stepped back. The second pod blinked. He had noticed it before. It was behind one of the support columns. Also green. Also marked dormant. The humming started next. Soft at first, low, constant, like a fan starting up in the floor. But it grew, not in volume, but in pressure, like the air was thickening, like the walls were tightening around the edges. He stepped toward the lift. Halfway down the corridor, the overhead lights cut out. Only the red strips remained, pulsing softly like an artery buried in steel. A second later, the overhead speaker cracked to life. Containment breach detected. All personnel lockdown in effect. Proceed to shelter. Doors sealing in 30 seconds. John stopped cold. He looked back towards the pods. The same one as before was releasing a low, steady hiss. Mist spilled from the corners like breath escaping a sealed mouth. He turned back to the lift, swiping his badge. The panel lit red. No movement. He tried again. Still nothing. Access restricted. Please clear containment zone. Now, the lift blast doors began closing slowly, without rush. Not slamming, just sealing with the same indifference the base applied to everything. He looked for another exit. There was none. Everything in this wing was one way in, one way out, designed for automation, not discretion. Another hiss. He turned. A second pod was active now. The fog had thickened. It crept along the floor like low tide, rising past his boots, pooling at the base of every containment unit. The cold wasn't biting anymore. It was thinning, warmer. Something about that felt wrong. He moved back toward the wall, took a slow breath through his nose, counted the blinking lights. There were 7 now, each with the same gentle pulse. Green, pause, green. Even, timed, coordinated. He stood still, watching. The speaker clicked again, just static this time, no voice. Then, faintly, he heard it. A mechanical click, sharp and distinct. A latch disengaging. Then a second. Somewhere down the row, another pod had begun to open. Not quickly, not with force, just with quiet, deliberate precision. No footsteps, no voices, no sign of security. Just him, the lights, the mist, and the dull realization that whatever the breach was, it wasn't over. It had only just started. The pod opened slowly. No noise now, no fanfare, just a long exhale of pressurized vapor, followed by a mechanical release, like the lid of a cooler unlatching. John didn't move. The steam poured across the floor. It wasn't violent, wasn't theatrical. It moved like fog across a lake, spreading evenly between the pods and coiling upward against the base of the walls. He stared through the glass. At first, he wasn't sure if anything was inside. The mist clung to the inside of the panel like breath on a window. But then, behind it, two eyes opened. They didn't glow. They didn't blink. They just stared. Large, reflective, too wide apart, like they had been placed with anatomical precision, but not quite for human symmetry. Then, a hand. The figure didn't move, didn't sit up, didn't react, just watched. The overhead speaker didn't say anything. The alarms had gone quiet. No updates, no reinforcements, just the dull mechanical hum that filled every deep hallway of this place. Something always turning, always whirring, even when no one was around to hear it. John stepped back slowly, his boots brushing condensation into streaks across the metal floor. Then, footsteps behind him. Louder, heavier. It was guards. Two of them. Hazmat gear, rifles drawn. They moved quickly, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. One pointed toward the pod. The other looked at John. Did he see it? The first one nodded. He's not cleared. Orders are orders. John raised his hands instinctively. Hey, I didn't touch anything, he said. I just... But they were already raising their weapons. Not at the creature. At him. And then the lights flickered. Just once. A single pulse. Not a full outage. Enough to reset the shadows in the room. Enough to silence everything for half a second. When they came back, the figure was gone. The pod was open. The mist was thicker. And one of the guards was already turning. Where is it? Then the scream. Not John. Not either of the guards. It came from deeper in the hallway, followed by a heavy crash. One of the pods had been smashed from the outside. The impact had left a shallow dent in the reinforced wall behind it. Steel warped like foil. The second guard ran forward, weapon raised. The other one turned back to John, voice sharp. You! Move now. John didn't argue. He stepped sideways, hands up, trying to explain. But before he could say anything, the hallway bent. Not visually, not with a noise or flash. The floor just shifted, like the gravity in the room tilted 5 degrees sideways. The steam pulled against the far wall. One of the lights overhead cracked, then swung free of its housing, shattering against the floor beside the second guard's boot. And then something moved through the mist. Not fast, not loud, just enough to disturb the air. The second guard opened fire. 3 rounds, short burst. The flash lit up the fog like lightning behind clouds. No impact, no reaction. The figure kept moving, walking, calm, upright, unarmed. The third shot never landed. The guard was pulled off his feet. Not tackled, not grabbed, lifted. Shoulders first, slammed upward into the ceiling grid. Held there for a second too long, then dropped. No more gunfire. No more orders. John ran. He didn't wait to see if the other guard followed. Didn't check who else was alive. He just ran. Boots slipping on the wet floor, dodging between rows of humming pods, now blinking in perfect green unison. Whatever was happening in sub-level 11, it wasn't a breach. It was a release. The corridor twisted around John like a closing fist. He ran through the red-lit hallways, alarms screeching in bursts overhead now. Behind him, not footsteps, not screams, just compression, like the air itself being displaced, as if something large was moving without touching the floor. Metal doors had slammed shut as he passed them, containment shutters, auto seals. The system wasn't trying to save him, it was trying to compartmentalize. He veered left at a junction marked Elevator Transfer, Access Restricted, barely registering the sign. His boots skidded as he turned. One arm scraped the wall to keep balance. He didn't stop. Another siren sounded, deeper, slower. This one was new. Zone failure, sub-level 11 compromised, initiating Phase 3 lockdown. He recognized the voice, not a human, a system, one that spoke during irreversible failure scenarios. Fork in the hallway. One way led to labs, the other toward bio-offload. He chose the latter. He'd been there once, years ago, during an ammonia spill response. There'd been a lift behind the decontamination chamber. It was old, manual, not tied to the main grid. As he reached the next junction, he saw motion, not human. Then, a hazmat guard came flying backwards across the hallway, not running, thrown. He hit the wall at chest height, folded, and dropped like a crumpled rag. Then, silence. Another pod burst, not far behind. He heard it rupture. Not a gentle hiss this time, a full pressure breach, glass and coolant. He ducked into the side hall. One of the blast doors had failed, stuck halfway. He slid under, scraping his back on the way through. The air on this side was warmer. That wasn't good. The cryo systems were offline. Every pod in this zone was thawing. Lights here didn't flicker. They stayed red. But the sirens were softer, as if the base was losing power, diverting everything to doors and lockdown timers. He turned the final corner and saw it. The maintenance lift, yellow framed, rusting, set into the wall like an afterthought. Boxes in front of it. He reached it, pulled the cover off the panel. Manual override. Physical keyhole. Just like he remembered. His hand shook as he slid in the brass key from his belt clip. The lift shuddered, then whirred to life. The gears engaged with a painful grind. Hold technology. No sensors. No AI. It either moved or it didn't. As it began to rise, he turned. Just once. Down the corridor behind him, the mist had thickened. Pods were hissing open in unison now, like synchronized gasps. Figures had emerged. Not running, not charging, just moving. Barefoot, maybe? Pale? Dozens of them. None rushed, as if they didn't need to. The lift whirred to life. At level 6, it slowed. He passed another corridor, this one still powered. Overhead monitors showed feeds from sub-levels below. Each screen, green-lit pods going offline. Labels blinking, unknown. The staff registry pages had begun deleting themselves in real time. Photos replaced with grey error boxes. At level 4, a burst of static came from the ceiling speaker. Then, clarity. Final evacuation in progress. Containment lock in T-minus 60 seconds. He looked down. The lift hadn't stopped. It hadn't been recalled. It was simply carrying him out. The last thing in the base still following a human command. At level 2, another voice interrupted. Any remaining personnel, remain in assigned zones. Do not exit base perimeter. Repeat, do not exit base perimeter. It wasn't a warning, it was a policy. The lift slowed to a stop. Level 1, upper corridor. John stepped out. The lift doors closed behind him. The air was warmer than sub-level 11, but still stale. The fluorescent strips lining the ceiling were dimmed, running on emergency power. There were no alarms, no movement, no sound. Just the low, intermittent hum of a base in controlled shutdown. The corridor ahead was empty. He began walking. Every door on either side was locked and dark. Office rooms, break zones, staging checkpoints, none responding to badge access or manual override. He tried each one once. No repetition, no forcing. He turned right at the first intersection and passed the security station. No personnel. 2 chairs. One monitor cracked, the other still active. A status screen looped through 3 messages. Evacuation complete. Sub-level 11, sealed. External breach protocol, low. Nothing else. No input prompts. No alerts. He kept walking. He followed the corridor to the external observation window. The dust was still hanging in the air outside. In the distance, barely visible now, was a long column of black SUVs moving across the desert floor. They weren't rushing. Formation was tight. Headlights were off. The base had been evacuated. Efficiently, quietly, without him. He didn't linger. He continued toward the nearest exit route, the main egress corridor near Section B. It was used during drills and material transfers. He reached the bulkhead door, swiped his card, and waited. No response. A red light blinked twice. Below it, a small wide type. Lockdown in effect. He moved to the second route, the west side loading ramp near vehicle staging. Manual latch. Physical override. He keyed in the code from memory and pulled the lever. Nothing moved. The mechanical system didn't engage. Power had been cut to the motor. He tried the final option, an emergency shaft used once during a fire drill. It had a vertical ladder, no lighting, and a magnetic seal at the bottom. The top hatch was already disengaged. He climbed halfway down and saw the red ring pulsing across the lower seal. No access. All external connections were dead. He climbed back up and stood in the dark for a long moment, begging his brain to come up with something. He returned to the corridor. The base was built like a grid. Left, right, forward, loop. But every path led back to the same place, the lift junction, the one that brought him up. He hadn't heard it move again, hadn't seen it descend, but it was gone. He stood in front of the shaft and stared at the floor display above the door. It was dark, no indicators, no movement. He turned away. There were no chairs, no screens, just smooth walls and a sealed access panel. He leaned against the far wall. No purpose, no plan, just watching. 2 minutes passed. Then, the light above the lift display blinked on. Sub-level 11 to level 1. He hadn't called it. The panel still didn't respond to input. But the lift was coming back up. He stood. No sound at first, just the red indicator slowly counting upward. When it reached the top, the number froze. There was a pause. The doors opened.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. And if you're an Area 51 janitor, always have an exit strategy.